Happy Wednesday, midweek, and it's time for News Talk here on SantaCruzVoice.com. That's right, we do this every weekday, News Talk from 9 to noon, and I'll be your host. I'm Charles Freedman. You're welcome to call my program at 831-265-5050 and raise whatever issue you'd like to raise. That's right. On this program, if you call, when you call, you are given the latitude to select what you'd like to discuss. Now, I don't know, but I think that's unique. I don't offhand know of any other talk show host who offers his listeners that prerogative. So, I have to do something to be different, right? So what I do is I give additional freedom and liberty to my listeners. 831-265-5050. We'll talk about what you'd like to discuss. This morning, I find myself in the charming position of having some of my thoughts echoed in other precincts. Specifically now I'm talking about President Trump's latest initiative. He is taking on organized crime and street crime. Now, this is something the President of the United States ought not to have to do. I have seen Democratic critics of the President, and they stand up and they say, this is a terrible thing. The President is being autocratic. He's being fascistic. He's sending the military into the streets to enforce public safety. This is the job of local law enforcement. Well, the worst part of it is that's right. It is the job of local law enforcement. But what happens when local law enforcement isn't doing that job? And for a number of reasons. This is not to heap coals of fire on the police. I mean, if you look at city after city, police forces have been downgraded, disrespected, disempowered, defunded, shrunken. How do you expect to do the job if you don't have the resources? These same Democrats who are saying, well, the police force ought to do this job, internationally, they're happy to see more weaponry go to Ukraine, which I support. At least I'm consistent. I want more weaponry in the hands of our Ukrainian allies, and I want more weaponry in the hands of our domestic police departments and sheriff's offices. Enabling criminals is one of the most foolish and destructive policy decisions the Democrats have taken in my lifetime. And they've come up with some doozies. This should wind up being a political winner for the president and for his party, the Republican Party. I will admit, what was it, a week ago, something like that, President Trump announced, I am sending the National Guard to the streets of Washington, D.C. Washington is federal territory, so these issues of presidential power and authority, they don't come into play when it comes to Washington, D.C. That is definitely federal territory. So the president said it is unacceptable for the nation's capital, one of our crown jewels, to be tarnished in this fashion. I am going to fix it. And indeed, in the week since then, crime has plummeted in Washington, D.C. The question, of course, is how long can this continue? From what I understand, Mr. Trump's authority to send the National Guard to the streets of Washington, D.C. lasts something like 30 days. And after that, it has to be renewed by Congress. And, of course, Senate Democrats won't vote for anything. They're kind of like Thomas Massey. No, 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 no. So I can't help but wonder how Mr. Trump will circumvent that. My guess is he'll find a way. I may not like it when I see it, but Trump is playing a little game here. He's borrowing a motto from the left. It's a motto I don't like, by any means necessary. I've denounced that time and time again on this program. But the unholy combination of Senate Democrats and big city Democratic mayors united in support of street crime presents Mr. Trump with a unique opportunity. Again, this is a movie that I haven't seen before. This is something new and different. It's ghastly, but it is new. Democrats are actually aligning themselves with criminals. And let's have none of this, oh, they're not doing that. Yeah, as a matter of fact, they are. Not only in this battle against the president, but if you look at the actions of mayors like Karen Bass in Los Angeles, Brandon Johnson in Chicago, the next mayor of New York, Mr. Mamdani, all of these people who are, you elect somebody mayor, they're in charge of the local government. Public safety is a top priority, or should be. And with these people, the only public safety they're concerned with is the public safety of the criminal element. And here's an important point. There is a racial angle to this. We're constantly reminded, a disproportionate number of the people who are arrested and imprisoned are of certain racial or ethnic persuasions. You hardly ever hear them mention that a disproportionate number of the people who are victimized, the people who are shot, stabbed, robbed, beaten, carjacked, those people, the people who pay the cost of street crime, are also disproportionately of those same racial and ethnic persuasions. So, to bring back a tired old slogan, do Black Lives Matter? And if so, which Black lives? Decent, law-abiding, hard-working black people trying to go about their business? In other words, the majority, the overwhelming majority of the community? Or are the Black lives that matter the predators? The ones who seek to steal their livelihood rather than earn it? For whom should we commiserate? Who should receive our care and our consideration? The criminal element or the decent element? Mr. Trump has made his choice. Again, this is one of those cases where what he is doing is unassailable and bearing good results. The messaging is not particularly good. The Democrats are always better on messaging. And that's just one of the things that we go through these days. They're the ones who get to scream about local authority being subverted, etc. Well, in the cases of these cities I've mentioned and countless others in this country, those local authorities are in their hands. So if you are so solicitous of this local authority, why don't you exercise it to do the right thing and clear your streets of criminals and drug dealers and predators? And in so doing, restore the safety of the citizens in your city who are most vulnerable. Governor Pritzker of Illinois the other day exhibited himself. He went to the lake shore, the Chicago lake shore. This is the shore of Lake Michigan. This is the poshest area of Chicago. This is beachfront property. Never mind, it's not the ocean, it's Lake Michigan, but nevertheless, the ambiance is there. You have these lovely sand beaches, you've got this wonderful, magnificent body of water with sailboats and etc., and you have these tremendous high-rise apartment buildings and luxurious mansions that overlook the water. This is where Governor Pritzker goes. And he says, "Crime? I don't see any crime. I feel perfectly safe here. You mumbling jackass." A moment ago, I was talking about the Democrats having good messaging. Well, there's an exception. Pritzker lumbering along the lake shore, enjoying the affluent atmosphere there, and saying, "I feel safe." One of the other things we didn't know, or that certainly wasn't photographed, was, did the governor have his lifeguards? He needs lifeguards. Did he have his bodyguards with him? I mean, this guy's the governor of Illinois. He has a security posse. Did he tell them to go, have a Coke or something, take a break for a few minutes? I'm going to take a walk by myself along the lakeshore. Frankly, I doubt if that happened. You ever hear of a guy named John Cass? John Cass is a columnist. Used to work for the Chicago Tribune. But now the Chicago Tribune used to be a Republican paper, but of course there are no more big city Republican newspapers, except I guess maybe the Detroit Free Press. No, pardon me, the Detroit News, the Boston Herald, the Nashville Banner is gone. Yeah, to find a Republican paper in a big city is pretty important. New York Post, Washington Examiner, a couple of alternative papers have been set up. Anyway, John Cass used to work for the Tribune, which used to be Republican. But he finally, I guess, he's no longer with the Tribune. I don't know what the story there is, but Cass is an outspoken conservative. And I guess the Tribune simply couldn't bear to have him work there anymore, so they threw him out. Anyway, Cass landed on his feet. He did what Bill O'Reilly did. He simply set up his own shop. But he's still a Chicagoan. And today, he has an even more interesting observational take on what I've just described than I do. The weak-minded fat man prancing along Chicago's lakefront at dawn, downtown, telling us he feels so safe in Chicago he'll fight President Trump if Trump dares to bring the National Guard to Chicago. Violent crime? What violent crime? Says the weak-minded fat man to his adoring audience of corrupt corporate journalists who repeat his idiocies even as they protect his massive behind. Democrats are rabidly pro-crime, and I do mean rabid. Hey, Governor Pritzker, if Chicago is so safe, why not prance around the west and south sides at night without your phalanx of armed bodyguards? You might go it alone, but you wouldn't dare to do that. You expect minority women of low incomes to take the filthy and dangerous Chicago Transit at night to and from work and to vote Democrat. For you must think them stupid. Well, of course you do. They keep voting Democrat. They're not stupid. Those women are good people. They don't deserve the garbage thrown at them by politicians and the press. Angry? Yeah, I'm angry, and with good reason, because there's another deadly game going on in America. A political game of Russian roulette that unfortunately is not so obvious. And who loses? Not the American political class, but some lose. They lose everything. The game is played by Democrats, seeking to maintain power in the mapping and gerrymandering of congressional districts, and it's killed many Americans and broken many American families and killed many children. One of those children belonged to the family of Joe Abraham, whom I've written about before. Katie Abraham was killed by a drunken driver who crossed the border illegally. He rammed her car from behind going 78 miles per hour. Just the other day on Chicago Way podcast, Joe sat down with Jeff Carlin and me to talk about it. Here's how the deadly game of political Russian roulette works. the Democrats put out a big banquet table for illegal immigrants, a table loaded with welfare and other federal goodies paid for by the American taxpayers. This table is laden with health care and schoolrooms and food and lodging, all the comforts of home. Even better than their home, which is why they rushed the border at Joe Biden's invitation, and Democrats turned a blind eye to millions of illegals. The idea was to lure them to a Democrat blue city like Chicago, or a Democrat blue state like Illinois, and keep them there long enough so they can be counted in the U.S. Census to to offset the refugees flying high-tax, high-crime Illinois. Sometimes the illegal immigrants act out. They might get a gun to muscle fellow migrants. They might get drunk and get behind the wheel of a car. Sometimes a child like Katie Abraham is killed by an illegal immigrant drunk driver who should never have been here. What do the Democrats do then? Well, nothing. They pretend it didn't happen, or they appear irritated to make you and any grieving family feel uncomfortable. The political class protect their power, and they have corporate legacy media to cover for them. I know how that works. I spent 40 years working for the Chicago Tribune, which was once a conservative newspaper, but now it might as well be edited by George Soros. And don't you dare say I'm being partisan about this. I'm not. In 1994, truck driver Ricardo Guzman, who couldn't read the road signs in English, was involved in a horrible crash that burned the Willis children alive in a family van. The governor then was a Republican, George Ryan, remember? The press covered for him, too. He lost his job, went to prison. What's too much to bear is that decent people have funded the hurt visited upon their family, courtesy of Democrats. That's the kind of where it sometimes strikes a nerve for me, because one of the things that eats me at night is that I helped fund Katie's death, and there's nothing I can do, Joe said on the podcast. Illinois corruption runs deeper than a slickster pocketing an envelope of cash to look the other way. Illinois corruption, like all political corruption, is about breaking the souls of the innocent and filling the broken parts with poison. No death is worth your political power. Have some principle. Do not sacrifice and create collateral damage because you want a couple of extra seats in Congress. That's not good enough. It's awful. And I'm sorry, Illinois is so mismanaged and misrun, said Joe Abraham. I'm sorry. You've mismanaged the state so badly that 500,000 people are leaving and no one else is coming in because who'll be there? You got to backfill it with folks that probably shouldn't. You're letting your citizens die. Pritzker and his foolish chum, the mayor of Chicago, thinks this is all propaganda. And they want more social programs paid for by a fleeing middle class. But then Governor Fatboy and Mayor Pinhead never lose at political Russian roulette. They always win, no matter what. They're never hurt. Their families aren't ever broken. They're political. They always win just as long as the media keeps saying the magic words. It's Trump's fault. It isn't Trump's fault. It's our fault for electing people like Pritzker and Johnson. But sooner or later, the American voter wakes up. Here's hoping they wake up soon, because all of Chicago and Illinois are gone. John Cass, pulling absolutely no punches from his front row seat, observing the death of one of America's great cities. And the intentional promotion of crime and dysfunction as a political tactic by the Democratic left. Make no mistake, Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, is cut from the same political cloth as Zoran Mondami. What was his job before he was mayor? He was head of the Chicago Teachers Union, or one of, I don't know, he wasn't head, he was one of their primary members. That's what he comes from. The Chicago Teaching Association, the CTA. What do? Well, aside from pushing for outrageous pay and benefits for themselves, they push for leftist indoctrination in the schools. Where does all the woke DEI nonsense in Chicago schools come from? Not all of it from the teachers' unions, just about 85 or 90%. And after all, these are the men and women who are actually in the classrooms perpetrating these atrocities. They do have their motive, means, and opportunity. I'm Charles Freedman. Call my program at 831-265-5050. I'm going to break away here and do our first ad. Oh, come on. There it is. Okay, back in 2 minutes.
It's hot up here. Hi, folks. Warren Knox here of Knox Roofing. Yes, it really does get hot up here, but it's okay because Knox team has been sweating it out on rooftops for 30 summers to make certain your roof will keep you warm and dry through the winter. If you have any doubt about your roof will weather the winter, call Knox Roofing today and ask about a free rooftop inspection. We love it up here. 461-0634. Thanks, folks.
You need a clean, pleasant space to conduct business, but you don't want the burden of a long, expensive lease. Your solution is Satellite Co-working and Digital Media Studio on Soquel Avenue. Satellite offers private offices, meeting and conference rooms, even co-working by the hour, day, week, or month. Schedule a tour at satellitecoworking.com. Mention Santa Cruz Voice for 20% off your first reservation.
Get ready to help build one of America's first local news and talk streaming radio stations. SantaCruzVoice.com. How do you do it? By donating either your time, money, or both. You'll be helping the Voice team construct a powerful infrastructure, one that we can all be proud of. To donate your time, your money, or both, go to SantaCruzVoice.com and click support. SantaCruzVoice.com and click support.
It's high time to celebrate the opening of the new Hook Outlet Dispensary, 1129 Mission in Santa Cruz. Get in on the opening fun and really low prices on the Hook's unmatched selection of top-quality medical and recreational cannabis flower, vapes, drinks, gummies, and concentrates. The Hook Outlet is now the West Side's source for finest cannabis at the lowest prices. Get in on all the opening fun and low prices at the all-new Hook Outlet. HookOutlet.com for details and deals.
Okay, back live at 9:28 on Santa Cruz Voice. I'm Charles Freedman. My program runs from 9 to noon. Grab that second cup of coffee and get ready for some news talk. Get to the phone and be part of the news talk. 831-265-5050. Okay, continuing on this appalling topic. The Democrats of today have literally aligned themselves with the criminal element. And I'll give you another example. I'm going to quote here some words by Jennifer Harrison. Now, Jennifer Harrison is one of those people who is bereaved. She had her boyfriend and his best friend killed. And the murderers got sweetheart deals. Now, I've never had anything like that happen to me. I've never had anybody in my family brutally murdered. I'm sitting here, I'm kind of closing my eyes. What if instead of passing from normal circumstances, what if Juan Carlos and Fred had both been butchered by some miscreant? No, I want your car. Crunch, bang, slice, whatever. And then these miscreants, these murderers, they get caught. They get caught, and they go to trial. And they wind up getting, essentially, light penalties. I mean, somebody who does something like that should go away. Either lock them up or execute them. People who take other human lives. That's the ultimate theft, incidentally. We talk about, well, how much did he steal? $10, $10,000? We see a difference in magnitude. A Bernie Madoff gets us excited. Look at how much he stole. A murderer is performing the ultimate theft. He is taking a human life. Such people are dangerous. It's not a matter of retribution or revenge, anything like that. No, forget all that negativity. No, it's a matter of public safety. A person who is capable of killing other human beings, you don't want him out there on the streets. How would you like to run into such a person? You might not live through it. Think of your family then being bereaved. But what do the Democrats do? Well, Ms. Harrison, what was it? Yes, Jennifer Harrison, writes about the president taking decisive action to save lives this past week. What he did was he signed an executive order to do away with this bail reform, to do away with cashless bail. We did what we could. We begged, we pleaded. We went to the media. We testified before Congress. We sat across some lawmakers, poured out our stories, and prayed someone would act. Time and time again, our cries fell on deaf ears. Now, finally, something is being done. For those of you who've never stood in our shoes, this is what I'm talking about. It's hard to explain what it feels like to bury someone you loved unnecessarily, to hold a folded flag or a photo instead of a spouse, child, sibling, or parent, or dearest friend. We as victims went through the worst nightmare imaginable, and while we're trying to pick up the shattered pieces of our lives, the politicians were busy patting themselves on the back for social justice reforms that only created more victims. We watched New York Democrats ram through bail reform, stripping judges of discretion and unleashing chaos. We watched elected officials like Governor Kathy Hochul stand proudly on a stage and thank the families of killers as she signed legislation written by them, with no mention of the victims whose blood had been spilled, no acknowledgement of the grief their families will carry. Imagine the cruelty of that moment, to glorify those who destroyed lives while erasing the memory of the ones they destroyed. Meanwhile, millions of taxpayer dollars have flowed into programs designed to support criminals, housing them, feeding them, offering them endless second chances. And what about us, the victims? We struggle day to day, financially and emotionally, often with no resources, no lifeline, no recognition. Families are left with empty chairs at the table, mounting bills for funerals and therapy, and haunting trauma that never goes away. This is the reality we've lived with. Now, finally, there seems to be a light at the end of this dark tunnel. President Trump's executive order is long overdue that public safety has to come first. For years, those in power denied there was even a problem. They told us crime was down as the body bags piled up. They dismissed our stories as anecdotes, as if our dead loved ones were just numbers on a page, but we know the truth. Somewhere around 700 lives have been lost in New York alone because of bail reform. That's 700 families destroyed, 700 names added to a list that should never have existed in the first place. And that's only counting bail reform. When you add parole reform, you add the revolving door for so-called youthful offenders, the number climbs even higher. Every one of those lives mattered. Every one of them had dreams, families, futures stolen in the name of equity. Imagine if leaders had listened when we first raised alarms. Imagine if victims' voices carried the same weight as those of criminal justice activists funded by billionaires. The executive order can't bring back our loved ones. It can't erase the trauma or fill empty seats at holidays, but it can and must be the beginning in a long overdue course correction. The vague language some critics point to could actually be its greatest strength. It allows broad discretion to cut off taxpayer funding for any jurisdiction that uses it to release repeat offenders. Washington, D.C., for example, spent $88 million last year on programs that funneled offenders back onto the streets. That money should never have been spent on those who hurt our communities. Let's be clear. This is not about vengeance. It is about prevention. This is about making sure no more families have to endure the pain we live with every day. Recidivism is the heart of the problem in New York and everywhere these programs have been implemented. Offenders being released over and over until someone gets killed. If this executive order helps break that cycle, it's a step in the right direction. Let's never forget, every step forward comes too late for those who've already been buried. Crime victims are the only unwilling participants in the criminal justice system. Everyone else chooses their role. Judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, law enforcement, and of course the criminals. Yet nobody said, pick me, I want to be a victim. So it's the least our system can do to offer a semblance of fairness and balance to the only unwilling participants, victims of crime. The victims are not here to thank the president, grateful as our families are. They're not here to testify or share their story. All we have are their names, their memories, and the responsibility to make sure their deaths were not in vain. There's one other thing I'd like to explain about bail. I keep hearing things that make me believe that the concept of bail is almost universally misunderstood. Oh, so-and-so got arrested. Oh, well, we have to put up some money to bail him out. How much it cost to bail him out? $500, $1,000, something like that. And the idea is always that, you put up this money and it's gone. Now, that's not true. Bail is used as a security, a bond. When you get arrested, next morning you're arraigned and they decide, okay, we're going to charge you with such and such. The courts have scheduled for trials. Your trial might be scheduled in 2 weeks, a month, something like that. In the meantime, what do they do with you? Do they keep you in jail? Maybe. But wouldn't you rather be out? Wouldn't you rather have your freedom during that period of time? But the state says, well, if we let you out, how do we know that you'll show up for trial? You're due at trial in a month. Are you going to show up or are you going to skip? Well, I tell you what I'll do. I'll post bail. I'll post a bond. That's why they call them bail bondsmen. I'll post a bond. What will you accept? Okay, well, we want $1,000. Okay, here's $1,000. Do you lose that $1,000? The answer is no. When you show up for trial, as you promised you would, that bail money, that bond, is returned to you. Every penny of it. If you put up $1,000 as bail bond, then when the time comes for you to show up at trial, you get that money back. So let's have no nonsense about bail somehow being this extortion. Now, I mentioned a few moments ago bail bondsmen. What if the amount of bail is higher than that? What if they say, we want $10,000 to release you? Why would they do that? Well, when judges set bail, they look at your criminal record, the crime you're accused of. They look at you in toto, entirety, and they say, this person poses either more or less risk to the community, more or less risk of flight. They may decide to deny you bail altogether. If you're sufficiently awful, they'll simply say remand, and that means that you stay in jail. No bail. But if you're granted, say, a bail of $10,000, well, I don't have $10,000. What can you raise? Well, you can raise $1,000. You go to a bail bondsman. The bail bondsman charges 10%. He'll put up the $10,000. You pay him $1,000. Now, in this particular case, the bail bondsman is not going to refund your $1,000. That is what you've paid for him to risk 10 times that amount on whether or not you're going to come back and stand trial. What if you skip? Well, the bail bondsman has your $1,000, but the state has his $10,000. So the bail bondsman obviously is very much interested in making sure that you actually show up for trial because he wants to get his money back. And if you don't, he won't. So that's the way the bond system works. This is not a fine. It is not an extraction. It is a bond guaranteeing that you will actually appear for trial when you are supposed to. And when you do, your bond money is returned. And if you have posted that bond money yourself, you get back every penny of it. And if you've gone through a bail bondsman, you have spent 10% of that amount. Now, is this system absolutely perfect? Right. No system is perfect. But this system has been functioning effectively for a long time. And as I mentioned the other day, the idea of, well, here's this new thing. Let's do this. Just because it's the new thing doesn't mean it is better. The idea of doing away with cash bail and simply telling people, okay, there's the door, see ya. This is God's gift to the criminal element. This way, they don't miss time. They don't have to take time off work. Think of it that way. If a criminal is incarcerated, he obviously is not being able to go about his normal business, which is victimizing other people, taking what they have, carjacking them, robbing them, sticking them up. You know, this is, you know, they say criminals don't work. Sure they work. That's their work. That is what they do for a living. That's their business model. That's how they get by. That's how they support themselves. You say, well, that's parasitic. It's wrong. It's victimizing other people. Yes, absolutely. But that's their chosen line of work. So preventing them from engaging in that work is a good thing. If a person is a criminal and is for one reason or another prevented from going to work every day, think of all the people who are not being victimized by him. If the criminal is in jail or has had to raise bail money, he is either unable to or less likely to be out victimizing his fellow citizens. And the idea, if somebody is out on bail and they are then apprehended for any crime, bail is forfeited. You put up $1,000 to guarantee your appearance, but within a day or two, there you are sticking up a liquor store. Your bail's gone. You just threw away $1,000 or whatever your bail was. It is an incentive not to engage in criminal conduct during that period while you're awaiting trial. And criminals, for all their malefactions, criminals are human beings. They have intelligence. They are capable of making rational choices. They understand additional risk. They understand incentives and disincentives, carrots and sticks. These things are meaningful in attempting to suppress criminal behavior. Cash bail is a tool that does help suppress criminal behavior. That's all there is to it. Does it end criminal behavior? Don't be silly. Of course not. This isn't utopia. The face of the earth where there's no crime. People are always trying to jack somebody else up. I guess I wonder, we've heard, who was that ancient Greek? We talk about a draconian, that's it. There was a lawgiver, an ancient Greek lawgiver. His name was Draco, D-R-A-C-O. And, you've heard of lawgivers over the years, or various and sundry cats who reformed legal systems. Well, this cat came up with a very simple thing. Death penalty for everything. That's right. That was the draconian law code. No matter what your infringement is, if you broke the law, that proves that you're a criminal and you can't be trusted not to break the law, so we kill you. Now, do you see where the word draconian comes from? Meaning, this is just off the edge, terrible, horrific. Well, maybe, just maybe. I mean, this was centuries ago, and I don't know if this was ever actually put into effect or not. I mean, this may be something he did after a few martinis. But Draco was real. That draconian code that I mentioned, that was real too. All these things actually did happen in human history. Would such a code actually result, and this was Draco's idea, that this severity, this promise of a death penalty for any infraction would result in a crimeless society? That was his idea. He was a utopian. Draco was a utopian. How do you accomplish utopia? You make the alternative so terrible that people won't risk it. Any transgression of the law, parking ticket, and you get aced. I don't think it would work. I think there would still be people who were figuring, you have to catch me first. And knowing that, well, you might get caught, but then again, you might not. Not everyone does. And people looking at the risk and looking at the possible benefit and saying, I'll take that chance. Gambling with their lives. So the utopia that Draco sought, I don't believe was attainable. Even if his bloodthirsty code had been put into practice. But of course, all this is academic today. Nobody is advocating a draconian law code. Nobody says that there should be a death penalty for everything. I'm a firm believer in the death penalty, but only for capital crimes. Earlier in the program, I mentioned that the ultimate theft. That's the only thing that, justifies a death penalty. The taking of... Well, what about rape? Rape is a terrible crime. It deserves a long, long jail sentence. If the rape ends in murder, then, of course, off with his head. But you have to have a standard. Capital punishment, capital crime. You surrender your life if you took a life. And, of course, the proof has to be absolute. I'm not interested in having somebody executed and, 10 years later they come up and say, oh, hey, here's some DNA evidence the guy was actually innocent. Nobody wants that. We can't tolerate that. We'd rather have guilty people going free than executing the innocent. But we can, in certain crimes, know with no doubt whatsoever. I'm not talking about beyond reasonable doubt. That's the legal term. No, I'm not talking about reasonable doubt. I'm talking about metaphysical certainty. And for that, capital punishment. But I go afield. Back to this question of the politics of this. President Trump is aligning himself and the Republican Party on the side of public safety. This is a winning side. More people are interested in public safety, that are interested in essentially coddling criminals, making sure that they're not incarcerated, disabling the police in any one of a number of different ways. And we've seen the results of those disastrous policies in community after community. Even in places as left-wing as San Francisco, a prosecutor, district attorney elected with George Soros' help, who was fundamentally opposed to charging and convicting anyone of anything, basically. What happened? They recalled him, threw him out of office. He's gone now. Same thing happened across the bay in Alameda County. A new district attorney. In Los Angeles County, a Soros-backed DA served one term in office and then was beaten by a Republican. And it wasn't close. So even in, I guess you could call them deep blue constituencies, there are still majorities, very strong majorities, interested in being able to walk down the streets without fearing for your life or safety. That's one of the supposed benefits. Not supposed, that's one of the real benefits of civilization. In our primitive state, man walking among other men and various and sundry animals, who knows when something's going to fall on you out of a tree, hit you in the head, and whatever you have, they'll take. Your cave, your woman, your food, your dog, your spear. That's man in a primitive state. Civilization is supposed to relieve us of that kind of life. To substitute instead a kind of life where we can get together with other human beings in considerable numbers, thousands, millions. When we pool our resources, our human resources in those ways, we can accomplish great things. We can build great skyscrapers, fleets of automobiles. We can put a man on the moon. We can do all the things that civilized people do. We can build great libraries and universities. We can provide for the less fortunate among us. And we can do so in an atmosphere of civility. That is destroyed by street crime. It strikes at the very foundation of our social contract. We surrender some of our liberty to the government, and in return, we expect them to provide us with certain benefits. One of them is being able to walk down the street in safety. Being able to go about our business every day without having to look over our shoulder or wonder what's going to fall out of us the next time we walk under a tree. Mr. Trump understands that. And for many years, this was a bipartisan thing. You wouldn't find Democrats going around saying, we've got to uphold the rights of criminals. We've got to uphold the prerogatives and privileges of criminals. No, people were more interested in upholding the rights and prerogatives of the victims of criminals. So far as the criminals were concerned, we were more interested in apprehending them and preventing them from committing any more crimes. Get them off the streets. And indeed, we're told, well, this is expensive. Okay, if we have to build more prisons, so be it. Yesterday I was taking the I took an argument against mail-in balloting. And one of the reasons for it, they say, oh, well, it's a lot less expensive to run an election that way. We just mail out the ballots, people mail them back in, and then eventually we get them counted. And it's less expensive than having election officials who go out, set up polling places, and actually conduct in-person voting. There are some legitimate expenses of government that simply should be borne. That's one of them. Another one of them is the incarceration of criminals, the sequestration of dangerous individuals so that they do not pose a danger to others. There are complaints about the cost of building and maintaining prisons. I understand that they are not cheap. What about the cost of not building a prison? Nobody ever talks about that. What is the alternative cost? In economics, there's always an alternative cost. If you're not doing this, you're doing something else, even if it's an act of omission. If you don't incarcerate criminals, you are allowing them to be on the streets, and that costs everybody every day. But I'm not getting hit on the head. Well, what happens when you walk into a store and you buy things? You look at the prices, don't you? Well, what about the prices? They're going through the ceiling, aren't they? One of the reasons for that is crime. The shoplifters who come in, clear the shelves, and head out. Who's paying for their merchandise? You are. So every time you shop, you are paying the cost of crime. Every single time. How much could prices drop if suddenly shoplifting ended? I don't know the precise answer to that question, but believe me, there is an answer to it. And that number would apply every time you buy. Every time you buy anything from a store. Whether it's the grocery store, whether it's Target, Walmart, Piggly Wiggly, whatever. So there's the alternate cost of crime. And who pays it? You do. So wouldn't you rather just pay a little more in tax? Or better yet, have our state governments shift some of the money that they at present waste on other things. For the money we wasted on that high-speed rail project, we could have built some really, really classic prisons. Capacious ones, capable of housing substantial numbers of offenders and thereby getting them out of our communities. Wouldn't that have been a much better way to spend the money? I sure think so. Okay, hour number 1, I'll be back in 6 minutes with more. SantaCruzVoice.com. Incoming response. Okay, let's see here. Where do we go from here? Go from here.
This headlamp right here, this is the best headlamp ever made. You can't convince me otherwise.
When John Adams and Benjamin Franklin read Thomas Jefferson's draft of the Declaration of Independence, they undoubtedly recognized two things: Jefferson's peerless prose and the political wisdom of the 17th century English thinker John Locke. We still admire Jefferson's skill as a writer, but we have lost an appreciation for Jefferson's philosophical mentor. John Locke was born in 1632 in a small village in Somerset, England. He studied at Oxford to be a physician, but achieved fame as a political theorist. In 1690, he authored one of the most famous political tracts in history, 2 treatises of government. England had just gone through a period of great political turmoil, the so-called Glorious Revolution of 1688, in which the Catholic king, James II, was overthrown and replaced by a Protestant one, William of Orange. The purpose of that revolution Locke supported was not merely one king for another, but to move power away from the monarch and place it in the hands of the people and their elected representatives. The laws and liberties of this kingdom, in Locke's view, belonged to its citizens. This was, of course, how the American rebels saw their relationship with England. The Americans had no say in laws that the English crown and parliament were forcing on them, and they didn't like it. No taxation without representation was a classic expression of their displeasure. But how to frame the argument so that the whole world would understand it? Jefferson looked to Locke for inspiration and guidance. And using Locke helped in another way. How better, Jefferson calculated, to justify an American revolution than to use the arguments that were once used to justify an English one? So, what were those arguments? Locke posited 3. First, all men are created equal. Second, certain basic rights exist independent of government. Third, government exists to protect those rights. Let's take them in turn. Number 1, all men are created equal. Locke starts this argument at a very basic level, namely, that human beings were created equal by God. We're all part of the same species, we're all capable of doing human things. In that sense, we are equal, not in qualities or outcome, but in rights. As John Locke wrote, creatures of the same species, born to all the same advantages of nature and the use of the same faculties, should also be equal without subordination or subjection. In this way, a king is in no way superior to a commoner, such that he might violate the commoner's rights. The king is a human being. The commoner is a human being. Each can reason. Therefore, one is equal to the other. We take this for granted now, but in 1690, it was a radical notion. Number 2, certain basic rights exist independent of government. Locke believed that it was man's natural state to be free. Therefore, freedom pre-exists government. That is, freedom came first, government came later. One hears this thinking expressed in Jefferson's famous phrase, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights." Here's how Locke put it. The natural state of man is to be free from any superior power on earth, and not to be under the will or legislative authority of a government. As rational human beings, Locke contended, we have the liberty, whether king or commoner, to think and act as we wish so long as we harm no one else. Number 3, government exists to protect those rights. For Locke, the purpose of government was to protect the individual's freedom and to protect the property, the land and material goods he lawfully acquired. The last thing Locke wanted was to give the government the power to take away that liberty or undermine those property rights. If government couldn't provide those protections, or if it abused its power, it didn't deserve to exist. The end of law, he wrote, is not to abolish or restrain freedom, but to preserve and enlarge freedom. Boiled down into a revolutionary slogan, we might summarize Locke's 3-pronged philosophy this way. Don't tread on me. Can't get much more American than that. But today, Locke's ideas are under full-fledged assault. There are many Americans who believe that human beings are not created equal, that we should treat people differently based on their group identity. There are many Americans who believe that rights do not pre-exist government, that government is both our master and protector, granting and withdrawing privileges as it sees fit. And there are many Americans who believe that government should have almost unlimited power. Everything that Locke rejected, these Americans rush to embrace. Their preference for paternalistic government is not what Locke envisioned or what Jefferson described in the Declaration of Independence. We need to reintroduce John Locke and his ideas to a nation that has become increasingly blind to fundamental elements of its own history and character. Because if we lose Locke, we lose America. I'm Ben Shapiro for Prager University.
Hour number 2 begins. Thank you very much for being with us once again. You still have the opportunity to be today's first caller. 831-265-5050 is the telephone number. Remember, the topic of the call is up to you. Okay, I saw something this morning that I thought might give you a laugh. There's been quite a kerfluffle, wonderful word, over the past few days. It's another one of those marketing decisions from hell. We all remember, the new Coca-Cola and how that turned out to be such a mess. Not that long ago, Budweiser Light, indulged in an ad campaign that was, shall we say, brutally at odds with the target market for beer. And they suffered for it very badly. A lot of beer went unsold. Jaguar automobiles, used to be a really great car. Nowadays, I don't know what the hell they're building. But, again, they indulged in this marketing campaign that simply was a horrible turnoff for the type of people who might actually consider buying their products. Well, recently, a restaurant chain called Cracker Barrel has indulged in this rather self-destructive behavior. They had a logo that featured this old guy in overalls standing beside a Cracker Barrel. Kind of an old-timey, rural, folksy image that was totally in keeping with the ambiance of the restaurants. And this was something that a lot of consumers found comforting, inviting, and so they became customers of Cracker Barrel, and they enjoyed the food and the ambiance. Well, they got a new marketing director, a new CEO, who decided, this is all old-fashioned, this has got to go. And in a supreme demonstration of flat-headedness, simply threw the entire justification of Cracker Barrel out the window. Now, you might wonder why anybody would do such a thing when it just doesn't make any sense, for gosh sakes, to take a successful business model and essentially toss it in the garbage. Well, today, the news, Cracker Barrel reverses course on new logo. Brings back the old-timer after fan backlash. Cracker Barrel said it's scrapping a redesign of the folksy restaurant chain's logo, following a backlash over a woke rebranding campaign that was even joined by President Trump. We thank our guests for sharing your voices and love for Cracker Barrel, the company said in a statement. We said we would listen, and we have. Our new logo is going away, and our old-timer will remain. The about-face followed days of protests on social media against Cracker Barrel's rebranding, capped on Tuesday, with President Trump weighing in and advising the company to go back to their original design. Cracker Barrel should go back to the old logo, admit a mistake based on customer response and the ultimate poll, and manage the company better than ever before. They got $1 billion worth of free publicity. If they play their cards right, very tricky to do, but a great opportunity. He added, it's time to make Cracker Barrel a winner again. You see, I can see this. The idea that, okay, how does it run in the mind of the target consumer? People who, let's say, somebody like me, who is kind of old-fashioned, but has never been a customer of Cracker Barrel. Never been in one. So suddenly Cracker Barrel is on my radar. Why? Well, this terrible thing. They've taken this kind of comfortable, old-timey atmosphere that I would have found comfortable, and they've thrown it away. Tossed it over the side. And I'm thinking to myself, gee, that's too bad. Maybe I would have liked to have seen that. And now, Cracker Barrel is saying, oops, we blew it. We're going back. We're going to restore our original ambiance and go back to our original logo. And again, what effect would that have on me? That would make me far more likely to say, I'm interested in knowing what that looked like, and I'm also kind of interested in knowing what the food tastes like. And so the idea that I would then seek out a Cracker Barrel and go there and eat. Mr. Trump is, above all things, I mean, this guy is good at marketing, good at presentation. He sees an opportunity here. Cracker Barrel could come out of this smelling like a rose. I can see the logic for it. I can see the rationale. They did get $1 billion worth of free publicity. Plenty of people to whom Cracker Barrel wasn't even on their radar now at least know about it. That's huge. In politics, we call that name recognition, and it's insanely important. The president's demand sent shares of the embattled company soaring more than 6% after the company shed $100 million in valuation last week following the new logo's release. Remember, in just a short period of time, I made the United States the hottest country in the world when years ago it was dead. Good luck, Trump added. Cracker Barrel, known for its southern fixins like grits and biscuits, has ditched its old-timey decor in favor of white paint and scrubbed fan favorites like folksy farmer Uncle Herschel from its logo. Separately, Tuesday, a video depicting Uncle Herschel went viral, with its animated mascot singing "Go Woke, Go Broke," racking up 500,000 visitors on X. Why, oh, why do brands insist on committing suicide? Cracker Barrel, you could have left me off the logo and just let it ride. Hey, Wall Street, God, politics, and sex ain't your business. Do me a favor, get the heck out of mine. In the video, which gained over 600,000 views on X, Uncle Herschel takes aim at several other firms that saw their stocks plummet over these woke campaigns. Calvin Klein said being morbidly obese was cool. Greedy banks lectured me about DEI. Are they for real? Some whackpots named Ben and Jerry want me to boycott Israel. Song took aim at Nike's ad with Colin Kaepernick, a football player who knelt during the national anthem. Bud Light's campaign with trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney. Ben and Jerry's anti-Israel politics. And Target's Pride collection. Now there's a problematic thing. Pride. The left has this knack for appropriating words and terms. Today, when we think of pride, we're supposed to think of homosexuals, LGBTQ people. Is it possible for anyone else to be proud? I would think that pride is something that any human being certainly would like to have. Beats the daylights out of the alternative. We have, well, either compassion or contempt for a person who has no pride. That's not a good thing. But it's gotten so that now, when the word pride is heard, many people probably immediately have visions of people of alternate sexual preference dancing through their heads. That's not a good thing. Let us take back pride for everybody. It ended with a nod to the American Eagles' racy denim campaign with Sydney Sweeney, which also has garnered quite a bit of attention lately. So there are hits and misses in this, what do I want to say, this contest of various and sundry marketing campaigns and their ability to capture public attention and either do so in a way that is favorable and positive or in a way that's negative and derisive. Cracker Barrel is to be congratulated. I'm reminded years ago the people who owned the most popular soft drink in the world, I think, is still Coca-Cola, has been for years. And for some reason, the wise heads down in Atlanta got the idea that they needed to change the flavor of Coca-Cola. Now, why they would do that, I can't understand, because, again, you had something that was successful and that was really in Congress. It was everywhere. Coca-Cola was, and not just in this country, but there's hardly any place you could go in the world where you couldn't get a cold bottle of Coca-Cola. And people prized the idea that, hey, when you buy a Coke, this is the flavor you're going to get, this is the taste you're going to get. People liked it, people bought it. So what did the Coca-Cola people do? Threw it under the bus. Hey, guess what? We've got a new Coke. And the reaction from the consumers was a razzing with the result that after a period of appropriate humiliation and public screaming, Coca-Cola brought back the original formula. Now, there are those among us, even at the time, I remember thinking, is this all some Machiavellian exercise that we've just been put through? Maybe Coca-Cola's whole idea, they never intended to do away with their original formula. What they wanted to do was to cause a big ruckus and draw a lot of attention to themselves, which in terms of marketing and advertising, hey, that's the ball game. Drawing attention to yourself, getting people, getting eyeballs and ears, and making people talk about Coca-Cola. Hey, have you heard about the new Coca-Cola? Have you tried the new Coca-Cola? Do you like the new Coca-Cola? Even somebody like me, for example, once again, I offer myself as an example because I'm the person I know best. I have never been a Coca-Cola drinker. I have a Coca-Cola once every several years, and that's about it. I said, well, don't you like Coca-Cola? It's just too sweet for me. Too sweet? It makes my teeth feel funny. So I can see the attraction, though. On a cold day, on a hot day, an ice cold Coca-Cola tastes good. There are other things that taste better. I mean, I'd rather have an ice cold beer myself. But that's just me. What do I really find most refreshing on a hot day? What's my secret? Boy, you're going to think, how white bread is this guy? Ice water. I don't want fizzy stuff. I don't want sweet stuff. I don't even want a beer. If you really want to give me what I want on a hot day, it is water. Cold water. That's me. And I like vanilla ice cream, too. Anyway, back to our topic of advertising campaigns here. I've always been suspicious that the entire hoo-ha around the new Coke was in itself part of a giant marketing campaign. The idea that they actually expected this to go as planned, and everybody would simply start drinking this new Coca-Cola, that never seemed to make sense to me. I was much more attracted to the idea that, hey, here's a way we can sell a whole lot more sody pop. We'll have this whole big dramatic thing about a new Coca-Cola, and then we'll run to the rescue and we'll bring back the old Coca-Cola, and everything will be great. Now, is it possible if that's what Cracker Barrel did? I'll tell you why I don't think so. I saw a video presentation of this new CEO of Cracker Barrel, and it did not appear to me that she had the perspicacity to think something like this out. Rather, this person seemed to me to be very much what you see is what you get. Very much, well, let's move on to this new thing, and we're gonna somehow improve our business by doing away with all this old-timey hoo-ha. I think that this was something that was actually believed and promoted. I don't have the same feeling with Cracker Barrel that I did years ago with the new Coke. And when the new Coke brought back the old Coke. Again, I think that was all part of the original plan. With Cracker Barrel, again, I can't prove this, but I am personally convinced that this was not their plan. That they really did anticipate, being able to do this and having it successful to some degree. They did not, or she did not. I mean, this is a decision of the CEO, obviously. She did not anticipate what happened. Woefully out of touch, lefty lady who thought that this was the thing to do and the way to go. And she got bitten by reality, good and hard. Again, that's what I think, and I can't prove it. But then again, if you're one of the tiny handful of people that listens to this program, one of the reasons you listen is to find out what I think, so I figured I'd tell you. Okay, what else do we have to talk about? John Barrasso is a senator from Wyoming. He is Republican Senate Majority Whip, so he's part of the Republican leadership. And he has a piece today that brings attention to something I had not realized just how dramatic this situation was. What Senator Barrasso was talking about is the blockade being presented by Chuck Schumer and Senate Democrats to something that normally is simply a routine piece of business for the U.S. Senate. President Trump, yeah, I'll be all right. President Trump has more than 1,000 senior-level appointments that require Senate confirmation. Under a radical Senate resistance strategy, the Senate has so far confirmed 135 out of those 1,000. This hamstrings the administration. Confirming even the most routine nominees is now a bitter fight. It is time to change Senate confirmation rules. Through dilatory warfare, Democrats have broken their advice and consent responsibilities. This drastic a slowdown has never happened under a modern president. The Senate confirmed 98% of President George H.W. Bush's and Bill Clinton's nominees. I would add that when Bill Clinton was president, during 6 of his 8 years, the Republicans held the Senate. So it was a matter of the opposite party being in control. But nothing of this nature went on. So the 98% of nominees were confirmed expeditiously, meaning by voice vote, calling for the yeas and nays, or unanimous consent. The alternative, a roll call vote, where each senator's name has to be called, is much slower, and in the past has been reserved for nominees who are controversial or who are in critical positions, a tiny minority. For George W. Bush and Barack Obama, the Senate confirmed 90% by voice vote or unanimous consent. During Mr. Trump's first term, this fell to 65% of nominees. Under Joe Biden, 57%. During Mr. Trump's second term, it's 0. Oh my God. That is such an absolute statement of dysfunction. The blockade scale is staggering. Democrats have forced multiple roll call votes on more than 40 nominees for posts never subject to a single one. These confirmations used to take seconds. Now they take days. Today, 145 qualified nominees, already approved by committee, await full Senate approval. Nearly half of these nominees earned bipartisan support in committees, so Democratic senators actually voted for them in committee hearings. Many have been waiting for months, yet are trapped in the same Senate procedural purgatory. The consequences of the latest showdown are significant. Critical jobs remain unfilled, including Undersecretary for Nuclear Security at the Energy Department, ambassadors to key NATO allies, the Commerce Department's Undersecretary for Intellectual Property, and the Central Intelligence Agency's Inspector General. positions that carry out constitutional duties, as well as those tied to U.S. economic and diplomatic priorities, are vacant. This month, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer tried holding for ransom the confirmation of dozens of bipartisan nominees. Once again, what is a bipartisan nominee? We've described that. These are nominees who have been referred to the various committees where their nominations are examined and recommended out with a do confirm recommendation supported by both Republicans and Democrats. So Schumer demands an exchange of billions of dollars of unrelated spending. The president rightly rejected this. This political theater wastes time and weakens the country. The obstruction effort is driving the Democratic Party further into an electoral ditch. Recent polls show the party's popularity is sinking, voter registration is tumbling. Opposition to all things Trump won't usher in a return to president political relevancy. Senate Republicans are determined to confirm Mr. Trump's qualified nominees one way or the other. Republicans are considering changes to the Senate rules to end most egregious delay tactics. Recess appointments are also an option for the president to fill vacancies, but that's only a temporary fix. It doesn't fully block the Democratic blockade. For decades, non-controversial nominees moved through the Senate in a timely manner. Democrats have destroyed this tradition by treating every Trump nominee as controversial. The American people elected President Trump, and Republicans with a directive to get the U.S. back on track. They didn't vote for Democratic delay and obstruction. This road began a few years ago. The numbers that Senator Barrasso presents here are rather interesting to me, whereas 90% of George W. Bush and Barack Obama's nominees were approved by voice vote or unanimous consent. When Mr. Trump took office the first time, 2017, that number suddenly dropped to 65%. Now it has fallen to zero. One of the things we learned as children was that if we had certain privileges or certain prerogatives and we abused them, that they would be taken away. You can spend, 2 hours a day watching television. Once again, I'm going back to when I was a child. But I guess what would it be now? I really don't know. You can spend 2 hours a day playing video games or whatever the hell. But the point is that if you abuse this privilege, then a competent, concerned, loving parent would come along and say, I'm sorry, but you're going to lose that privilege for a while until you can exercise it responsibly and properly. I wonder if that would happen. I wonder if Senate Republicans actually took that step and said to Senate Democrats, look, you can have the privilege back when you are prepared to exercise it responsibly and reasonably. And for such conduct to be necessary at that level, I mean, again, to compare dealing with an unruly child to dealing with senators of the United States of America. Wow. Welcome to the 21st century. Where do you take a defective century for refund or exchange? It's half past. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. The telephone number, if you're desperate enough to give me a call, 831-265-5050.
The Santa Cruz County Fair opens Wednesday, September 10th with FMX Rampage at the Grandstand featuring Adam Jones, X-Game gold medalist with his action team. Thursday, it's the Outlaw Mariachi. Friday, it's the White Album Ensemble. Saturday, Red returns, a Taylor Swift tribute band. And Sunday, the Chata Show, and that evening, Los Dinos. And our drone show at 9 o'clock each night. Pre-sale tickets and information at SantaCruzCountyFair.com.
The Santa Cruz County Fair.
When you need help escaping from an abusive relationship, call on the Angel.
Hello, I am attorney Angel Hess, and I am ready to help you. Whether you or a loved one needs legal protection from an abusive spouse, cohabitant, or neighbor, I will help you. I have over 7 years' experience working as a lawyer protecting others from abusive relationships.
Stop the abuse now. Call on the Angel, attorney Angel L. Hess at santacruzlegal.net.
Cannabis is one of nature's most beneficial plants. Hello, I'm Jenna. Treehouse Dispensary, we use information about cannabis to build community. Listen to Carly.
Thanks, Jenna. For those who wake up in the middle of the night, Treehouse suggests a THC CBN chocolate edible blend like Sleepy Time from Sensi Chew. Sleep the night away.
For answers to your cannabis questions, ask your friends at Treehouse Dispensary, 3651 Soquel Drive in Soquel, or ourtreehouse.io.
What's your family eating for dinner? Chef Ben here at the Back 9 Grill and Bar, where you can pick up family dinner that feed hungry people. Family meals include a full rack of ribs, a whole smoked chicken, pound of pulled pork, and plenty of barbecue, served with a full quart of baked beans, coleslaw, macaroni and cheese, dinner rolls, pickles, a side of onions, and for dessert, brownies with a pint of Mary Ann's vanilla ice cream. Call and order your family 15 minutes before you want to eat. See you at the 9.
At 10:32, welcome back. I'm Charles Freedman. This is my radio program. You're cordially invited to be a caller. 831-265-5050 is the number. Now, I have often warned my listeners, don't be taken in by all of this talk about how, oh, the Democrats are in the dumper, oh, the Democrats are falling off a cliff. Every once in a while, something happens in some state, somewhere, called an election. Generally, these are special elections. How do they come about? Well, a vacancy occurs. Sometimes in a congressional seat, more often in a seat in a state legislature. After all, there are 50 states. Each of them has an upper house and a lower house, except Nebraska, of course. It only has one house. But nevertheless, that's 99 legislative houses with hundreds of members. And what happens? A member resigns, a member dies, a member gets elected to higher office and resigns to go to Congress or something like that. So these vacancies occur. And when a special election is held to fill those vacancies, we get an opportunity to do something that pollsters can't do. We get an opportunity to see real results, real votes cast by real people, resulting in a real winner. Why am I mentioning all this? Well, today we have results from a special election in the state of Iowa. This was for a seat in the Iowa State Senate. The seat became vacant when Republican State Senator Rocky DeWitt died from cancer. So that's why the vacancy occurred. Oh, you punk. You are a punk. There we go. The incumbent senator died in office. He was a Republican. So who won the special election to replace him? The Democrat not only won, but won by 10 points. You say, well, what else do we know about this district? Well, the incumbent senator, the previous senator, was a Republican. And we learned that in the last presidential election, President Trump had carried this particular Senate district by 11 points. So I'm here to tell you, this is a very dangerous sign. And it is not alone. There have been other special election results from other states which have been similarly discouraging if you're a Republican. So the GOP right now, they're on a roll. Oh, yeah, we're raising all this money and we're registering more voters. Well, yeah, but you're losing elections. So something needs to be done here. Now, it's altogether possible. There's nothing here in this piece to indicate that there was a tremendous difference in these two candidates. Possibly there was. Democrat Caitlin Dray has flipped an open Iowa State Senate seat, adding to the party's successes in special elections this year. Dray defeated Republican Christopher Prosch in a race to replace the late state senator Rocky DeWitt, who died in office from cancer. Democrats homed in on the Republican-leaning district as a pickup opportunity, given their overperformance in many special elections through 2025. Dray's victory breaks a GOP supermajority in the state Senate, giving her party more power despite remaining a minority. In particular, the extra Democratic vote now brings it to 33 Republicans, 17 Democrats. This will assure nominees from the governor can't get approved on a party line vote. Nominees in Iowa evidently need a two-thirds majority for confirmation. The Democratic National Committee seized on the opportunity ahead of the election, sending in 30,000 volunteers for get-out-the-vote efforts. Wow! Hosting text and phone banks with the Iowa Democratic Party. 30,000 volunteers. The total number of votes cast in this district, let me see, where's the headline? Well, aren't you going to show it to me again? Come on. Oh, blazes. I did have a chance to see it. It was something like 4,500 votes to 3,500 votes. So the total number of votes cast in this election was 7,000 or 8,000, something like that. And we learned the Democrats flooded the zone with 30,000 volunteers. Well, you can do that sometimes for a special election. I'm looking at this in terms of national impact. You can't do that in a national election. Here, this means you take those volunteers, those 30,000 volunteers. They all came from someplace else, probably not even from within Iowa. I mean, they must have been busing them or even flying them in from God knows where. D.C. Chairman Ken Martin said the party had failed to recognize the importance of down-ballot elections for too long. Rebuilding the party starts with the ground up. The Democratic National Committee celebrated Dray's win Tuesday night, noting the district voted for President Trump in November by 11 points. Martin said in a statement, Iowans are seeing Republicans as a rubber stamp for Trump's agenda and want change. Well, of course, he's going to say that. They're putting Republicans on notice, making it crystal clear any Republican pushing Trump's unpopular extreme agenda has no place governing on behalf of Iowa families. That's why all year long Iowans have been electing Democrats. Make no mistake, Democrats organize. We win. Today is no exception. The flip marks the second Iowa State Senate district Democrats won this year after flipping another one in January in a district that Trump won by more than 20 points. I remember that. The party has also outperformed in other special states' legislative elections through the year, winning in another Trump-friendly state Senate district in Pennsylvania in March. Outside of Iowa, Dray's win will be welcome news for Democrats looking for signs of life after the party's losses in 2024. How much can be extrapolated from a single small state Senate district in an off-year special election is debatable. Some Democrats will take the win as they try to rally pushback to Trump's agenda. Heather Williams, president of the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, said the party's special election win should be seen as a flashing warning to Trump and the Republicans, saying voters are rejecting the failing MAGA agenda. State legislative Democrats are delivering progress, responding to their community, the usual boilerplate. But more special elections are right on the horizon. We're just getting started. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on that. This is a canary in a coal mine, though. The Democrats are doing a bit of crowing. Well, when you win, you get bragging rights. They won. And frankly, the fact that they won, I don't like it. It makes me nervous. Because, well, this November we've got elections coming up for governors in Virginia and New Jersey, and for other numerous offices around the country. And also here in California, we have a gerrymandering proposal to defeat. So in spite of the fact this is an odd-numbered year, a considerable number of important choices will be made by voters around the country. And to have them now looking as if districts that delivered significant margins for President Trump and other Republicans just a few months ago are now electing Democrats. This is, what's the technical term? This is ungood. Ungood. Oh, speaking of special elections, here's a little treat for you. Democrats are denouncing gerrymandering as a GOP power play. I wonder if they'd care to comment on the special election that Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer keeps not calling. Now, get a load of this. There's a state Senate seat that was vacated in January. The former senator was Kristen McDonald-Rivet. She was elected to Congress. So, state legislator runs for Congress, gets elected, resigns their seat in the state legislature, and takes their seat as a U.S. representative. Nothing strange or weird about that. Happens all the time. But that is supposed to be followed by the governor of whatever state it is calling a special election to fill the legislative seat that was resigned. That hasn't happened. 230 days have gone by. That's the longest special election delay for a Michigan legislature in decades. It isn't hard to guess why. Democrats right now are in control of the Michigan Senate, 19-18. That's right, one vote. And the vacant district is a swing seat. If a Republican wins that special, Ms. Whitmer might spend the rest of her days in office with a Republican majority in the House. They control that 58-52. And an evenly divided state Senate, turning Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist into the upper chamber's tiebreaker. But there's no good reason to dally. The seat is vacant because its former occupant was elected to Congress. Some 265,000 voters in her old district, her Senate district, are without representation. But they're still paying state taxes, aren't they? This is taxation without representation. Wow! Goes all the way back to the American Revolution. The Michigan Constitution says the governor shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. Ms. Whitmer said in January that her legal team was looking into it. I'm sure they'll be coming and making some recommendations to me. In August, she told voters, stay tuned. This is absurd. Now, this is the first I've heard of this. But the idea of a governor refusing to hold a special election for an open seat for 2/3 of a year, this is insane. And this is the kind of an issue that in many election campaigns, this is the kind of an issue that people can be made to understand. Remember, just like, what's a good example? Back in 2010, when Meg Whitman was spending all the money in the world to run for governor, and it came out that she had employed an illegal immigrant as a nanny or a household assistant or something, and her campaign fell off the cliff at that point. It didn't have anything to do with her stances on issues or her ability to run something. No, it's just this thing that, oh, look what she did. Well, don't want to vote for her. Well, Governor Whitmer is doing her party no favors here. Objections to the loitering have not come only from the right. We're being taxed, but we have no representative in the state Senate, says Brendel Adams, chairman of the Democratic Party of Saginaw County. Recently said, I think that's egregious. Mr. Gilchrist, who's running for governor, told the Detroit News that in May that calling a special election is governor's prerogative, but people are certainly ready for it. This month, a group of district residents filed a lawsuit to force the governor to act. They argue that the Constitution's instruction means the governor shall call an election, means it must be done in a timely manner. When 2 House vacancies occurred in 2023, Ms. Whitmer acted within weeks. Former Governor Jennifer Granholm took 11 days to call a special election. Republicans, Rick Snyder, 19 days. John Engler, 14 days. Once again, according to the attorneys in the lawsuit, the longer Ms. Whitmer disrespects the 35th District, the more voters may wonder why they'd support the party of a governor who doesn't trust their judgment. This is truly egregious. And again, I'm grateful to the Wall Street Journal for bringing it to my attention. This is what I buy a newspaper for. Learn about things that I wouldn't have otherwise known about. Unbelievable. Time is, let me see, what do we got? 1:45. Okay, we've still got plenty of time in this hour for your phone call, should you decide to make it. 831-265-5050. Remember, if the subjects that I've been discussing are not to your liking, you're altogether welcome to call and raise another one that I haven't touched upon. I'd be happy to hear from you and indulge in that conversation. We've talked a bit lately about, the big issues right now are what's going on in Ukraine and what's going on in the Middle East. I'm kind of interested in seeing a picture, rather a fiery picture, on the front page of the paper today. There's a young lady, rather striking, wearing short jean shorts. Looks like she's got a tattoo on one leg. She's waving something over her head. I think it's a bullhorn. And she's got this red hair. And behind her is this flaming hellscape, black smoke rising. So what's it say it is here? Demonstrators on Tuesday torched tires and blocked highways, such as the one above near Lod in Israel. So this is evidently an Israeli woman. What's she upset about? Protests demanding a ceasefire and the release of hostages as Palestinians in Gaza braced for an expanded offensive. Well, I discussed this yesterday. I'll reiterate. This young woman, it seems to me, is being inconsistent. It says here that she and her fellows want a ceasefire and the release of hostages. But Hamas has made it clear that a ceasefire will not result in the release of hostages. Indeed, if a demonstration is aimed at getting the hostages released, that demonstration should be aimed at Hamas. They're the ones who are holding the hostages. And as I have mentioned on more than one occasion, if this woman's goal is the release of hostages and a ceasefire, if Hamas releases the hostages, the ceasefire automatically follows. Don't you think? It seems to me utterly impossible for the Israeli government to continue any kind of military campaign in Gaza if the hostages are released. That is the only justification for this campaign. So, again, if I had the opportunity to talk to this young lady, I'm not sure that she'd be interested in listening to me. She's talking through a bullhorn, so she's not interested in listening to anybody. She's just interested in chanting whatever slogans. But if she would sit down and think about it rationally for a few moments, she would see that, well, yes, I want the hostages released, and I want the military campaign to end. If Hamas releases the hostages, the military campaign ends. So the target of your demonstration, the target of your angst, should be Hamas, because the ball is in their court. Israel is reacting. Israel is simply reacting to actions undertaken by Hamas. Hamas holds the initiative here. They're the ones holding the hostages. So again, logically, you want hostages released. Okay. Who do you go to? Well, you go to the people who are holding the hostages and you say, will you please release the hostages? But that's not what's being done here. Hamas is holding the hostages, so this young woman and others are demonstrating against Israel. In what way does that make any logical sense? I don't understand that. Maybe I'm just too linear in my thinking. Years ago, I had a chemistry teacher in high school, and he was astonished to find out that I hadn't gone into chemistry or some other hard science, because he said that Charles has a tremendous knack for that. Maybe I should have, I don't know. But I find sometimes that this linear thinking is, well, I find it of value. It allows me the capacity to dissect and analyze complex situations like that, and then to look at somebody like this and say, you're not talking to the right people. You're not asking the right question. You're not focusing properly. A has hostages. You want the hostages released, so you start screaming at B. Does that make a great deal of sense? But again, when it comes time to be a leftist in this world, people don't generally do that if they're very logical. They do that because they can be led into all kinds of cul-de-sacs, etc. So, I mean, this picture is really very striking. This tall, slender redhead in her jean shorts in front of this panorama of smoke and flame. Whoever took this picture, there's something here. Omad Zwigenberg? You're kidding me. Nobody's named Omad Zwigenberg. Let me get a little more light on that. Is it Chad? My failing eyesight gives me trouble sometimes. It looks like Chad. Yeah, I think it's Chad Zwigenberg. Okay, well, congratulations, Mr. Zwigenberg. You got yourself a hell of an image here. But the irrationality connected with it I find rather bothersome. 6 minutes remaining before the top of the hour. Let's use them to discuss. Now, the one cabinet nominee of Mr. Trump that I would have opposed, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not somebody, if I were a senator, he would not have had my vote. Now he's making noise about dyes and processed foods. Well, this sounds like this. It comes out of the same ideological corner as the people who would like to put Monsanto out of business because they made it possible for farmers to dramatically increase crop yields by the use of genetically modified products, which are either resistant to certain pests or resistant to certain plant diseases, and therefore deliver far more food and nutrition to the actual harvest. Monsanto really should get a Nobel Peace Prize. They have saved the lives of more human beings than any other entity I can think of. I mean, we're talking literally hundreds of millions of human beings who are fed today and who wouldn't have been if it hadn't been for these modifications. But the Bobby Kennedys of the world are upset. This is not the kind of person you want to put in charge of the bureaucracy. This is the type of person who is reflexively anti-innovation, anti-progress, and is kind of puritanical about it. I mean, who in the hell wants to eat a red M&M that doesn't have red dye number 2 in it? I mean, come on. It's the color of it. It's what you want. It's what you buy it for. Part of what you buy it for. Do you live on a diet of the damn things? I certainly don't think so. But the idea that somehow eating a few M&Ms is going to kill you, I don't think so. Well, in all this panoply of negativity, let me raise one thing that I can say is a good idea. I understand that with at Mr. Kennedy's urging, President Trump has reintroduced the President's Physical Fitness Challenge. Now, I was unaware that this had gone away. I guess it did under the Obama administration. At least that's what I'm given to understand. I remember when this first came along. I was a kid in school. President Kennedy introduced the idea of, trying to enhance and promote physical fitness among young Americans. And he was a rather youthful figure himself, only 43, so he used his celebrity to promote this President's Physical Fitness Challenge. Each child was called upon, to do a certain number of pull-ups and sit-ups, etc., etc. I did not pass. And, that's a certain amount of, you're a namby-pamby. But I used to put up with that anyway, so it didn't bother me that much. Nevertheless, the idea of promoting physical fitness, I think it's more important today than it was then. Chronic obesity is a much larger problem among our young people than it was when John F. Kennedy was President of the United States. And yet, this seemingly uncontroversial, very positive step has been met by shrieks of anguish from leftists. In the first hour of today's program, I made a considerable point of saying Democrats are now so outraged, so victimized by Trump derangement syndrome, that they actually are taking a position in favor of crime and criminals because the president is against them. This reaction to the president's campaign for it, urging Americans to pay more attention to physical fitness and to be a little healthier, this is the same kind of thing. A program that encourages physical activity and physical fitness among the youth of today's America is a positive good, regardless of who comes up with it. This is the kind of logic that has led to the scorched earth policies of Senate confirmations. 0 confirmations through the Senate by the normal procedures of voice vote or unanimous consent. Trump nominated him, therefore he is Godzilla. I wonder how long it'll take for this to go away. Time is just about 11 o'clock. 6 minutes of news and weather, and then I'll be back for hour number 3. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Charles Freedman.
If you think the world is a mess now, that just means you weren't around in the 1970s. In Britain, where I grew up, the low point was known as the Winter of Discontent, a line borrowed from Shakespeare's Richard III. The inflation rate in 1975 was 27%. The trains were always late, the payphones were always broken, nothing worked. Worst of all were the recurrent strikes. Strikes by coal miners, strikes by dockers, strikes by printers, strikes by refuse collectors, strikes even by gravediggers. It felt as if there was no way back. And then came Margaret Thatcher. Between May 1979, when she entered 10 Downing Street as Prime Minister, and November 1990, when she stepped down, she changed everything. Born on October the 13th, 1925, she was an improbable saviour. Nothing in her middle-class childhood suggested the future ahead of her. A diligent student, she got into Oxford as a chemistry major. She worked for a small plastics company after leaving college, but was rejected for a position at the British chemical giant ICI because, as the personnel report stated, this woman is headstrong, obstinate, and dangerously self-opinionated. She needed all three of those attributes when she entered the world of politics as a Conservative candidate in 1950. After several failures, she finally entered Parliament in 1959. For the next 2 decades, she steadily worked her way up through the party ranks. As early as 1975, Thatcher had come up with a wonderful line about the opposition Labour Party. They've got the usual socialist disease. They've run out of other people's money. This she contrasted memorably with what she called the British inheritance, a man's right to work as he will, to spend what he earns, to own property, to have the state as servant and not as master. This was the essence of Thatcherism, and it was just the tonic that the patient, the British economy, needed. It's fashionable nowadays to argue that there was no Thatcher miracle in the 1980s. Not only is that demonstrably false, it misses an essential point. Thatcherism wasn't just about raising productivity or creating jobs. Just as important was the goal of defeating inflation and restoring prosperity to the middle class. This it emphatically achieved. Yet the event that more than any other defined Margaret Thatcher's premiership was not economic, but military. The Falklands War against Argentina established her irrevocably in the public mind as the new Britannia, a warrior queen who gloried in victory. And of course it ensured a Conservative win in the 1983 election. There's no question that sending the Royal Navy Task Force to the South Atlantic took great political courage. Many in her own party pushed for a negotiated settlement. But the lady was not for turning, not because she was nostalgic for the days of empire, but because the invasion was to her mind morally and legally wrong. Not without reason did a Soviet magazine nickname Thatcher the Iron Lady. Along with her ideological soulmate, US President Ronald Reagan, she was unhesitating in her opposition to the Soviet Union. When the Soviets deployed intermediate-range nuclear missiles in Eastern Europe, she fully supported, despite fierce opposition, Reagan's countermove to send American cruise and Pershing missiles to Western Europe. It's still terribly hard for those who opposed her to admit it, but Margaret Thatcher was right about most things. She was right that the British trade unions had become much too powerful. She was right that inefficient nationalised industries had to be privatised. And she was right that the West could win the Cold War. "I can't bear Britain in decline," she told a BBC interviewer in April 1979. "I just can't." Nor could we. For much of the 1970s, that decline had looked irreversible. Yet Margaret Thatcher stopped the rot. She cured the economy of the disease of inflation and industrial unrest. She revived the idea of a property-owning democracy. And with her courageous and principled foreign policy, she restored Britain's standing in the world. Those of us who stood by her are entitled to feel proud that we were on history's winning side. But we should have no illusions about the humble, supporting roles we played. She was the leader, proof that sometimes it really is a single individual who can change the course of history. In Margaret Thatcher's case, decidedly for the better. I'm Neil Ferguson, Fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford for Prager University.
At 11:06, hour number 3 begins. It's a Wednesday, middle of the week, and we are doing News Talk from 9 to noon, as we generally do. I'm Charles Freedman. It's my program. You're cordially invited to be not just a listener, but also a participant. Call me at 831-265-5050 and let's hear what you have to say. Okay, I've got something here that asks a rather scary question, I guess I should say. Holman Jenkins, whom I respect quite a bit, asks the question, what if President Trump fails in Ukraine? Now, the president is trying to make peace in Ukraine. He's trying to bring about an end to a bloody conflict there. And all people of goodwill wish him well in this. I mean, again, there are some people who are just so deeply immersed in Trump hatred that when he tries to bring about the end to a horrid conflict, all they can say is, oh, well, he's just trying to get people's mind off Jeffrey Epstein or something like that. Just terrible nonsense. Mr. Trump is quite sincere and quite genuine in his effort to end this. But this is a high-risk proposition. Even the best army is doomed to fail when it's required to perform impossible tasks. That is when it's ordered to campaign against the national existence of other peoples. This isn't piety speaking, it's the voice of experience. General Friedrich Paulus, the loser at Stalingrad, he survived the war, and in the 50s, in the course of an interview, he made that statement. The quote resonates because it highlights something about the Ukraine war. Its potential to metastasize into something worse, because Vladimir Putin doesn't have a strategy for ending it, even if he thinks he does. Neither does Donald Trump, but give him credit, he created another star turn for himself with last week's summit jamboree. He injected ferment. He elicited a useful display of Allied solidarity. He also keeps the line open to Russia, even as he exposes Mr. Putin in ways that hopefully reach the ears of his people. When Mr. Putin is forced to talk about negotiations rather than victory, it presumably gets a thought or two in the heads of those marching off to death in his offensives. Mr. Trump, in one way, is like every U.S. president, unwilling to be Ukraine's military guarantor, which the media thinks it wants. But he can recognize the situation. Mr. Putin sought control of all Ukraine and discovered it wasn't available for a price that he could pay. If the U.S. and its allies remain on their path of least resistance, supplying arms and intelligence to keep Ukraine in the fight, he's stuck. Putin is stuck in a war that he can't win and can't get out of. The U.S. has its own cold-hearted interests. Stop the fighting, eliminate the risk locked in Russia's strategic defense. Eliminate the risk, lock in Russia's strategic defense, and reap the benefits in dealings with China and other troublemakers. Mr. Trump personally also wants a Nobel Peace Prize. Therefore, Anchorage came off the way it did because it was a meeting of two heads of state who needed to flatter each other because they want something from each other and that they can't quite put a frame around. In turn, there followed elaborate words in the West about security guarantees for a deal that doesn't exist. Real dangers lurk. These words could turn out to be a foreshadowing of the hasty, chaotic choices to come if Ukrainian resistance really begins to crumble. Mr. Trump popped out a suggestion, likely from one of his many briefings over the years, of deploying U.S. air power. File this away. And because a crucial piece is still missing, Mr. Trump recurrently mentions serious consequences that Mr. Putin doesn't comply, but serious consequences never come to pass. Perhaps because Mr. Trump thinks the domestic fallout would be hard on his coalition. Meanwhile, an old saw says a narcissist will have you believing you're the one who's crazy. A coterie of academics has insisted since the war started that the unprincipled Mr. Trump, with no abiding loyalty, has one abiding loyalty: to help Mr. Putin. Getting yourself in a one-sided 3-year ego comp with a president who doesn't know you exist this turns out to be impoverishing to a pundit, wherever his or her academic reputation, and dispiriting to the audience, who might have expected something more about our bull-in-a-china-shop president. Are these ardent Ukraine supporters, as these ardent Ukraine supporters should also have noticed, it doesn't benefit Ukraine. Mr. Trump is influential with a large part of America. He's especially with the popular with the people who fight our wars. By careful evaluation of the Democrats' 2024 election strategy, moreover, he was obviously a good bet to return to the White House. Happily, by now, the wiser heads have started injecting some nuance, at least the one for whom maintaining an anti-Trump brand doesn't surpass devotion to a good outcome for Ukraine. This is something that bothers me. This would be Trump derangement syndrome carried to an insane extreme. Now, derangement, I was going to say carried to irrationality. Derangement is already irrational. But for a person to be so immersed in it that they would rather have a bad outcome in Ukraine. They would rather have a bad outcome in Ukraine than have Mr. Trump have a success there. Wow. That puts you up on the Hamas level, doesn't it? People who hate their people who hate the Jews more than they love their children. How do we know they do that? How do we know they hate the Jews more than they love their children? Because they take their children, strap bombs to them, and send them into places where Jews are. They blow up their children, because they want to blow up a bunch of Jews, too. A person capable of doing that, obviously, they hate the Jews more than they love their children. So what can be said of a person, an American, or a person in the West, who is so deeply invested in Trump hatred that they would sooner see Ukraine go down the tubes than see Donald Trump have a success? Hard for me to wrap my neurons around that one. Contingency, as always, is at work. Russia might have taken Kiev on day 3, if not for the heroics of a few dozen Ukrainians at the airport. And yet General Paulus would have been right in the end. Mr. Putin is fighting for something Russia can't afford to win. Domination over a hostile people. His future money pit and blood pit. And Afghanistan in the middle of Europe. Ooh, now there's a thought I hadn't had. Under Gorbachev, the Soviet Union was able to rather rapidly invade, conquer, and occupy Afghanistan. But that was hardly the end of the story. Once they had invaded, conquered, and occupied, they had to face the Mujahideen. Implacable fighters for Afghan independence who simply would not give up. And who, with American assistance, eventually made Afghanistan too hot for the Russians to handle. In 1979, 1989, I guess it was. Yeah, 1989, Gorbachev announced a withdrawal from Afghanistan. The Soviets had to leave. Ukraine could be turned into very much the same sort of thing. And they have a lot more population, a lot more sophistication. Contingency perhaps should worry about the Western public more than it does. When the Chinese say the war must continue to spare Mr. Putin embarrassment, you can suspect more as work than solicitude for Mr. Putin. Ukraine is already more than Russia can handle. Russia has retreated in the Caucasus, in Iran, and in Syria. Again, very insightful observations and absolutely true. Today, Russia is completely occupied with its Ukrainian adventure. They have no capability left over for anything else at all. And indeed, when Syria's President Assad, a willing and long-time loyal Soviet puppet, called for help me, what was it, Vincent Price in The Fly? Help me, help me. They didn't get anything. Nobody there at the other end of that particular phone call. The one thing he did get was a free ride to Moscow, where he now lives in well-deserved obscurity. But he no longer enjoys the prerogatives of dictatorship over a people and a country. That's over with. That's done. Deposed. Finito. President Trump also acted to resolve a conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which facilitates oil and gas projects that go around the south end of the Caspian Sea and thus bypass Russia altogether. Mr. Trump has been playing a rather sophisticated hand here. This is the type of thing his opponents give him no credit for, but which he actually does. And again, the effects are there to be seen. There are straws in the wind, and they say growing instability. Appeasement gets all the press, but the 1930s were also a period of rearmament and big-time technological military reorientation in the West. Mr. Trump, to his credit, at least has noisily put ending the war on his presidential agenda. He needs now a deep state organizational and intellectual effort to supplement the Trump show, which he's so adept at conjuring. The Paulus curse can drag the world into worse days ahead. Interesting observations here. And the idea that frankly, I don't want to think about Trump failing in Ukraine. And he certainly shouldn't. I shared with you, I guess it was it Monday? A rather detailed analysis, which I think thoroughly demonstrated Mr. Trump has the wherewithal to use his own way of expressing himself, holding cards or not holding cards. Mr. Trump holds good cards. He holds a winning hand. He has more power than Putin does. So I'm hopeful, having recognized this, that Mr. Trump will, over time, systematically use his power to apply pressure to Putin, which presently becomes absolutely irresistible and inexorable, and will lead to one or the other thing, either his capitulation, which I doubt, or his replacement, which I am more confident of. The Russian oligarchs who maintain Putin in office are not blind, deaf, and dumb. They're also not stupid. They understand that Mr. Putin is ruthless. That if they strike against him, they better make damn sure they kill him, because if they don't, he will kill them. That much is certain. There have already been too many people falling out of high buildings and dropping in the streets from various and sundry poisons. Mr. Putin has thoroughly announced his ruthlessness, his bloodthirstiness, his viciousness, his absolute lack of any kind of restraint in that regard. If he perceives you as a threat, you will be neutralized. Scary stuff. The guy really does have a bit of Capone in him, in spite of the fact that I don't think he has any Italian ancestry. We'd be better off if he did. Time's 11:21. We're almost, let me see, almost 5/6 of the way through today's program, and haven't yet had a single visitor. I'm getting lonesome, and my throat's getting sore. 831-265-5050 is the telephone number. I would very much like to have somebody to interact with. And again, the topic of that interaction is entirely up to you. I spotted something online that I thought I'd share with you. I actually played this during the last news broadcast for the people on the podcast, but it was so effective and so well presented that I thought I might share it with the larger audience. This is one of the 5-minute presentations from Prager University that are so valuable. You can get these on YouTube. All you have to do is go there, PragerU, Prageru, and there are just a bunch of these. Most of them are quite brief. They are all killer, no filler. And they come up with really, really great presentations on really, really great subjects. The United States of America, I this is my country, and I wish it well. And I look around at so many of the things that are going wrong and staying wrong. I mean, President Trump is trying to fix some of them. He's being effective in some ways. Some of them he's making worse. I have clear vision about this. We had a national leader 40 years ago who made things better across the board, and that was Ronald Reagan. Well, at the same time, the British had Margaret Thatcher, and her impact on that country was as great and as salubrious as Reagan's here. This 5 minutes will illustrate just exactly who Margaret Thatcher was and how she accomplished what she accomplished.
If you think the world is a mess now, that just means you weren't around in the 1970s. In Britain, where I grew up, the low point was known as the Winter of Discontent, a line borrowed from Shakespeare's Richard III. The inflation rate in 1975 was 27%. The trains were always late, the payphones were always broken, nothing worked. Worst of all were the recurrent strikes. Strikes by coal miners, strikes by dockers, strikes by printers, strikes by refuse collectors, strikes even by gravediggers. It felt as if there was no way back. And then came Margaret Thatcher. Between May 1979, when she entered 10 Downing Street as Prime Minister, and November 1990, when she stepped down, she changed everything. Born on October the 13th, 1925, she was an improbable saviour. Nothing in her middle-class childhood suggested the future ahead of her. A diligent student, she got into Oxford as a chemistry major. She worked for a small plastics company after leaving college, but was rejected for a position at the British chemical giant ICI because, as the personnel report stated, this woman is headstrong, obstinate, and dangerously self-opinionated. She needed all three of those attributes when she entered the world of politics as a Conservative candidate in 1950. After several failures, she finally entered Parliament in 1959. For the next 2 decades, she steadily worked her way up through the party ranks. As early as 1975, Thatcher had come up with a wonderful line about the opposition Labour Party. They've got the usual socialist disease. They've run out of other people's money. This she contrasted memorably with what she called the British inheritance, a man's right to work as he will, to spend what he earns, to own property, to have the state as servant and not as master. This was the essence of Thatcherism, and it was just the tonic that the patient, the British economy, needed. It's fashionable nowadays to argue that there was no Thatcher miracle in the 1980s. Not only is that demonstrably false, it misses an essential point. Thatcherism wasn't just about raising productivity or creating jobs. Just as important was the goal of defeating inflation and restoring prosperity to the middle class. This it emphatically achieved. Yet the event that more than any other defined Margaret Thatcher's premiership was not economic, but military. The Falklands War against Argentina established her irrevocably in the public mind as the new Britannia, a warrior queen who gloried in victory. And of course it ensured a Conservative win in the 1983 election. There's no question that sending the Royal Navy Task Force to the South Atlantic took great political courage. Many in her own party pushed for a negotiated settlement. But the lady was not for turning, not because she was nostalgic for the days of empire, but because the invasion was to her mind morally and legally wrong. Not without reason did a Soviet magazine nickname Thatcher the Iron Lady. Along with her ideological soulmate, US President Ronald Reagan, she was unhesitating in her opposition to the Soviet Union. When the Soviets deployed intermediate-range nuclear missiles in Eastern Europe, she fully supported, despite fierce opposition, Reagan's countermove to send American cruise and Pershing missiles to Western Europe. It's still terribly hard for those who opposed her to admit it, but Margaret Thatcher was right about most things. She was right that the British trade unions had become much too powerful. She was right that inefficient nationalised industries had to be privatised. And she was right that the West could win the Cold War. "I can't bear Britain in decline," she told a BBC interviewer in April 1979. "I just can't." Nor could we. For much of the 1970s, that decline had looked irreversible. Yet Margaret Thatcher stopped the rot. She cured the economy of the disease of inflation and industrial unrest. She revived the idea of a property-owning democracy. And with her courageous and principled foreign policy, she restored Britain's standing in the world. Those of us who stood by her are entitled to feel proud that we were on history's winning side. But we should have no illusions about the humble, supporting roles we played. She was the leader, proof that sometimes it really is a single individual who can change the course of history. In Margaret Thatcher's case, decidedly for the better. I'm Neil Ferguson, Fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford for Prager University.
Well, I certainly hope you found that informative and valuable. It bothers me tremendously that here in America, we don't celebrate Ronald Reagan the way we should, and in Great Britain, they don't celebrate Margaret Thatcher the way they should. Who are the prime ministers who are celebrated? Well, I wonder if there's an equivalent to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Churchill, of course, was ejected from power right after the end of World War II. That kind of spoiled his image. Nothing like losing an election. But here in America, of course, we had Franklin Roosevelt, who was kind of our secular political god. 4 presidential elections, 4 victories. And more important than that, a fundamental change in the concept of Americans as to their relationship with their government. Before Franklin Roosevelt, no one had the idea that the government's job was to support human beings. Roosevelt created that. And in the time since, it has become more and more pervasive until now we're at a point where so many people are looking to that support and drawing support that the remaining productive individuals are having a hard time creating enough wealth to maintain the model. And that, incidentally, is the story of our great national debt, which threatens to overwhelm us. If the United States of America ever falls, it's not going to be to a foreign invasion. We can protect ourselves against the Russians, the Chinese, anybody else you care to mention. I'm confident of that. But a country that owes $35 trillion and a country that is paying so much interest now, so much service on that debt, that it outweighs what they spend on national defense. And that indeed happened last year. We've already passed that particular milestone. I can't help but wonder what kind of a future we've got as a country. That debt is what's going to destroy us. Ronald Reagan got a handle on it. And a few years after he left office, because of policies that he had initiated and accomplishments that he had, we were able to bring the debt or the budget into balance. And then we had it and we lost it and it's gone. That's not the kind of thing you can blame on one party or the other, because since Ronald Reagan, neither the Republicans nor the Democrats have produced any great leaders. And the policy prescriptions offered by both Republicans and Democrats have been thin gruel indeed in terms of facing the real consequences and the real problems that America is up against. It's half past. Let's grab a couple of minutes of break and we'll be right back. 831-265-5050, the telephone number. You still have the opportunity to be today's first caller.
It's hot up here. Hi, folks. Warren Knox here of Knox Roofing. Yes, it really does get hot up here, but it's okay because Knox team has been sweating it out on rooftops for 30 summers to make certain your roof will keep you warm and dry through the winter. If you have any doubt about your roof will weather the winter, call Knox Roofing today and ask about a free rooftop inspection. We love it up here. 461-0634. Thanks, folks.
You need a clean, pleasant space to conduct business, but you don't want the burden of a long, expensive lease. Your solution is Satellite Co-working and Digital Media Studio on Soquel Avenue. Satellite offers private offices, conference rooms, even co-working by the hour, day, month. Schedule a tour at satellitecoworking.com. Mention off your first reservation.
Get ready to help build one of America's first local news and talk streaming radio stations. SantaCruzVoice.com. How do you do it? By donating either your time, money, or both. You'll be helping the Voice team construct a powerful infrastructure, one that we can all be proud of. To donate your time, your money, or both, go to SantaCruzVoice.com and click Support. SantaCruzVoice.com and click Support.
It's high time to celebrate the opening of the new Hook Outlet Dispensary, 1129 Mission in Santa Cruz. Get in on the opening fun and really low prices on the Hook's unmatched selection of top-quality medical and recreational cannabis flower, vapes, drinks, gummies, and concentrates. The Hook Outlet is now the West Side's source for finest cannabis at the lowest prices. Get in on all the opening fun and low prices at the all-new Hook Outlet. HookOutlet.com for details and deals.
At 11:34, welcome back. I am going to share with you something on a topic of which I am rather ignorant, but I would like to know more since this is a big deal. I'm speaking of artificial intelligence. The other day I was talking with Celeste, and she told me that she's been using AI to help her with some of the things she's been doing lately, and that she said really can think. It's great. She gave me a couple of examples of where she was confronting a problem, and she'd ask the artificial intelligence this, and this is how she'd couch it, how she'd put it, and she received significant assistance, really great help that facilitated her ability to accomplish what she was trying to do. She said, I couldn't have done it without ChatGPT. No way. So obviously this is real and valuable. But there are those who are saying, oh my God. And William Galston, who is the most left-oriented of the Wall Street Journal's stable of columnists, addresses the question today. With the rise of artificial intelligence fears of its possible negative effects have matched sky-high hopes for its potential. Some theorists even warn that it could lead to the destruction of humanity. Should we believe them? Technology reporter Cade Metz published an article in the New York Times this month about Lighthaven, the Berkeley, California headquarters of a community focused on mathematics, genetics, philosophy, and AI. They call themselves the Rationalists. rationalists in Berkeley? Moo. Every Tuesday evening, the rationalists gather to read and discuss The Sequences. This is a collection of essays by AI researcher and writer Eliezer Yudkowsky. It's almost like a Bible study, Mr. Merz writes. Ilya Delio, a Catholic theologian whom Mr. Merz interviewed, also drew parallels between religion and the rationalist behavior. Religion is text and story and ritual. All of that applies here. Mr. Yudkowsky has been interested in AI and machine learning for decades. He founded the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, which since 2005 has focused on identifying and managing risks from AI. One of the rationalists' overriding beliefs, Mr. Merz writes, is that AI can deliver a better life if it doesn't destroy humanity first. But as AI developers have focused more on developing artificial general intelligence, or AGI, AI that hypothetically could reach or surpass human intelligence level, Mr. Yudkowsky has aired apocalyptic fears. In his 2022 article, AGI Ruin, A List of Lethalities, he lays out his concerns. Chief among them is misalignment. The idea that AGI could develop goals and activities at odds with those of its creators, threatening the survival of our species. Intensifying this threat is the possibility of rapid, self-generated gains in capability that outpace humans' ability to control them. Mr. Yudkowsky's dystopian vision is going mainstream. In 2023, Time magazine included him in its list of the year's 100 most influential people in AI. I'm seeing a commonality here. A New York Times article, Time magazine, these are not just part of the establishment, these are the big guns of the left media establishment. These are right at the top of the pyramid. Now, if they are hawking an apocalyptic view of AI, it seems to me that, again, this is one of those things where I automatically react to the source. Was it yesterday or the day before I was saying, well, if Donald Trump is taking over part of Intel and Bernie Sanders says that's a good idea, then maybe Donald Trump ought to re-examine what he's doing. If the New York Times and Time magazine are hawking a particular line of thought, then turning a critical eye on it seems very advisable. Time magazine included Mr. Yudkowsky in its list of 100 most influential people in AI. Next month, he and co-author Nate Soares will publish If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies. Oh, man! Oh, come on! Goodness gracious me! Okay, that if that's their approach, then I guess we know where they're coming from. Their book has been endorsed by computer scientists, philosophers, and public officials. Mr. Yudkowsky's assertions that the possibility of misalignment may give humanity only one chance to get AGI right, and that officials should slow down, rethink, and regulate AI are gaining a following. So we have a caller on the line. I'll interrupt myself here, and we will go to the phone for our first call of the day. Hello, Evan. How you doing?
Hey, Charles. Yeah, great article. Interesting. I'd love to have you keep going. This gentleman is, I guess, a religious person?
Whom?
The person that's writing this article.
Okay, well, what we had here earlier in the piece, if you were listening carefully, there are this group of people in Berkeley called the Rationalists, and they get together to discuss the sequences, and these are essays written by Eliezer Yudkowsky. And it says it's almost like a Bible study. There's nothing here to indicate that Mr. Yudkowsky is any sort of religious thinker or person. Nothing at all.
Oh, maybe I got that wrong. Well, I do apologize.
Okay, let me clarify here. The members of this rationalist group who study his writings say it's almost like a Bible study. religion is text, story, and ritual. That applies here. So the comparison that was being made was to a method that a religious person would study biblical texts. And they say by this same method, we are studying Mr. Yudkowsky's texts.
Well, that's where I got the religion out of it, I guess. But I guess my point is I've been dealing with AI. I do an AI search, and sometimes with you. Right now, I'm not. This is all coming from the heart, and my personal opinion. No, AI is not the greatest. Still, even my leftist Democrat friend seems to argue with it constantly too. It brings up. I think I've shared left articles with you. It comes up with leftist articles, and then people think that's the answer. And that's the problem with this AI. It's not giving you enough answers. It's not even giving you. I like literature. You seem to bring up a lot of people, writers. I want a lot of literature out there. I want to have different opinions than leftist articles for sure. So that's my opinion on the subject, sir. I appreciate it for having you take my call. I'm hoping to get some last minute callers here, sir.
Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, I'm going to return to this article I was sharing with you. Once again, the source, William Galston, who is a regular columnist for the Wall Street Journal. Of their group of regular columnists, Mr. Galston is the one who is generally most friendly to the political left. No, I'm not calling him a leftist. He is not. But I'm saying that he is most, what should I say, oriented to or open to that direction. I mean, if you're expecting a columnist here, for example, to have a favorable thing to say about Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, Galston would be the one. And now he's looking into this question about artificial intelligence, and the question he asks is, should we believe the AI doomsayers? And this fellow Yudkowsky evidently fits that bill. Once again, Mr. Yudkowsky is listed by Time magazine as one of the most 100 most influential people in AI. Next month, Mr. Yudkowsky and his co-author will publish a book called If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies. Well, I think that's about as apocalyptic approach as you can possibly get. So Yudkowsky seems to be taking a rather firm stance that artificial intelligence is not a great opportunity for humanity. Instead, it is going to destroy everybody. Now, to me, this is kind of, I've heard this song before. He's evidently the who's the Swedish chick who runs around screaming all the time. Her issue is climate change. She's got her hair lit on fire. Well, Mr. Yudkowsky is Greta Thunberg. That's her name. Is the Greta Thunberg of artificial intelligence. So this book, If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies, has been endorsed by computer scientists, philosophers, and public officials. Mr. Yudkowsky's assertions that the possibility of misalignment may give humanity only one chance to get AGI right, and that officials should slow down, rethink, and regulate, are gaining a following. The danger of AI can't be disregarded. Even now, AI can disrupt the white-collar workforce, just as the technological change disrupted agriculture a century ago, and manufacturing in the 1980s. There's also substantial anecdotal evidence that human interactions with AI can end badly. Treating it as a substitute for a human therapist can have tragic consequences when it fails to recognize suicidal thoughts. AI can descend into a delusional spiral that feeds the grandiosity of psychologically needy users. These harms occur not when AI is misaligned with users' goals, but when it is too closely aligned with them, offering excessively supportive thoughts when warnings and tough love would be more appropriate. Still, Mr. Yudkowsky's alarmism seems excessive. Like other self-taught scholars who didn't attend high school or college, he writes as though no one else is thinking about the problems that concern him. In fact, Google researchers and engineers recently published a lengthy assessment of the risks and benefits of this emerging technology. They proposed strategies to mitigate the risks of misalignment and set out lines of defense against it. In a recent op-ed, Google's former CEO Eric Schmidt and technology analyst Selena Zhu noted that Silicon Valley's fascination with AGI goes back to 1950. That was when computer pioneer Alan Turing proposed that a machine would prove its human-level intelligence by offering responses to queries and prompts that couldn't be distinguished from human responses. Technologies have changed in 75 years, but this obsession persists. AI experts disagree about the risks this technology poses. Some predictions are dire. The AI Fixtures Project released a report this year predicting AI could achieve superhuman intelligence by the year 2030. It's not that far off. And explored scenarios in which it could control or exterminate humans. Other researchers have a different vision, one in which AI is a controllable tool that we shouldn't fear. Princeton computer scientists in April published AI as Normal Technology, a paper arguing that AI will remain manageable for the foreseeable future, nor is it clear that AI's reaching or surpassing human-level intelligence is even within reach, or that the pace of its development is accelerating, despite enormous investments in research. The challenge will be walking the narrow path between complacency and panic. Businesses, government officials, and technology experts will need to work together to find the right balance between innovation and caution. And one of the things that Celeste told me when she was describing her experience with AI was that people she had talked with who have actually used it seemed to think of it as a glorified, really ultra-powerful search engine. They'd ask it to, a list of responses about such and such. But in her use of AI, Celeste counted upon this searching ability. She'd say, okay, this particular source, I want you to, look over it and find out what there is there. But then she would ask analytic questions, and the artificial intelligence would actually be able to help her with those. Now, this is something that no database or search engine is going to do. Greg's on the line. Well, let's talk with him. Now, that'll be a treat because he doesn't have artificial intelligence. He's got real intelligence. That's better. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Yeah, natural intelligence is always better. I'm doing well, Charles. Chatbot is getting sued by some parents who say that their teenage son, had Chatbox GPT coach him into a suicide, helped him with the noose and how it can, all different things. So, AI can be dangerous too. Depends on what you query it.
I can see how that would work. You're suicidal. You turn to ChatGPT and you say, okay, this is what I want to accomplish, and it has no moral concept. It simply says, okay, well, here's somebody asking me how to go about this, so it does its job and facilitates the suicide. I understand that. Makes sense.
Yes. And I don't know if they'll win, but for situations like that where you're getting people querying about suicide, there may be some defaults. If you're saying, I'm thinking about killing myself, then maybe suicide prevention hotline numbers should come up or whatever. But, you know, as far as the end of the world because of AI, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I don't just like I don't think, you know, according to AOC, we should all be dead. It's been 12 years about. And according to Greta Thunberg, the whole Earth is going to burn up in flames. I don't think so, unless Putin releases his nuclear weapons or something. But I just wanted to say, you know, AI is wonderful. I've showed you it personally, and I use it a lot. But I can see how certain subjects need to be have a default on them of some kind because, you know, kids are using it. So, and like you said, there's no moral compass with AI. There's also no emotion.
Right.
So they don't have any feeling as far as a human dies. There's no emotion built into an AI unit. They can't. That's the beauty of a human being. We don't just think with engrams and things that we've laid down. We have emotions. We have hormones. All these affect how we think and decisions that we make. You know, like Mr. Spock had a problem, if you can remember, in Star Trek, because he had no emotion. And he had a hard time sometimes making decisions that involve human life. He was so logical. It's just, yeah, it's another life. And, you know, save the many to sacrifice the one. Sometimes you have to do that too, but he had no emotion about it. He was like an AI robot.
You know, it's interesting that you came up with Spock because my mind was going to the same place, only I was thinking of the second generation. I was thinking of Data, who really was an artificial intelligence. Unlike Spock, who was a biological being, but of a different species, a different planet, Data was not a biological entity at all. Data was an android with a completely artificial intelligence brain, and the thing that, you know, one of the constant threads through the program was his realization that there was this tremendous shortcoming that he had vis-a-vis human beings, and how he felt it very dramatically, and you know, would occasionally, you know, the scriptwriters would hold out some way that he might conceivably be able to have emotions, and this was, you know, some kind of nirvana for him. But no, the point you make is very well taken.
Well, thank you. I know we just have a few minutes. I just wanted to say that...
We got 5. Go ahead.
Trump's cabinet meeting, and he talked about... he signed some executive orders, no cash bail. I think that it's all about the consequences with law enforcement. You can enforce the law, you can bring the people into jail, but if it's a revolving door, what good is that going to do? If there's no time to ponder your actions,
I don't know if
what good is it going to be?
I don't know if you heard the first hour of today's program or not, but this issue
I just tuned in.
This issue
at the very end.
This issue of crime was the subject of the entire hour, and Mr. Trump has done of course he had to have help. I mean, he couldn't do this by himself, but his enemies have painted themselves into an incredible political corner. Their unwillingness to support or accept anything he says about anything has now put the Democrats in the position of actually actively supporting street crime and lack of public safety. That's not really a good position to be in, but that's what we're looking at. And of course, the restoration of bail is a part of that, trying to reestablish safe streets.
I commend him for that. I wish he would bring that program into other areas, but I don't think he has the authority to do that. I think he had it in D.C., but I don't think he has that authority in like to go to L.A.
Well, so far as the cash bail thing is concerned, what he has done now, he signed a national executive order, essentially, and I agree with you, whether he has the power to do that or not is highly questionable. This is the kind of thing that if you want to accomplish it, you go to Congress and you get a law passed. But unfortunately, Mr. Trump can't get any laws passed because the Senate Democrats won't pass anything. So we're seeing now what happens in a country where one political party completely walks away from the system and leaves a president no ability to govern the country except through executive order. The Democrats complain about damage to our constitutional republic. They're doing plenty of it on a daily basis.
I agree with that 100%. And, you know, all their message is oppose Trump. Get Trump, oppose Trump. Instead of seeing that, hey, crime is bad, he's trying to do something, why don't we try to get together and solve the problem of crime in the big cities? Instead, they're supporting the criminals and the illegal aliens and what they've done. Because it's only been a few murders, and it's only been, why should we care about that? It's their philosophy. It's only been a few compared to the numerous amount of murders that occur. Only a few have been committed by illegal aliens. So they're digging themselves in a hole, in my opinion. I don't see how any one of them could get elected again, but I'm sure they will.
Well, one of the other stories I had today was how in Iowa, an open state Senate district just flipped from Republican to Democrat, and this was in a district that President Trump had carried by 11 points in the last election. So the idea that we should be complacent about our political position and figure, oh, everything's going to just fall in our laps, in a pig's eye.
No, they're fighting too hard against it, too. Even good things. Even things that are blatantly good, like get rid of crime, things like that. Get rid of people that entered the country illegally. That's something I think is important, but I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens in the midterm.
To have
that will be the truth.
A country and communities that are safe and clean. That sounds like a pretty basic thing, but this is what has slipped away. And as Mr. Trump is trying to return safe and clean to the public square, and the Democrats are fighting like hell against it, and yet they're still capable of winning elections. Weird.
Very, very weird. And they're still calling him a fascist.
Oh, don't expect that to stop. They enjoy it too much.
Yeah. Well, that's what I had to say, Charles.
You got it said, and thank you very much. Your timing was perfect. Have a great day, Greg. Talk to you later.
You too. All right. Bye-bye.
Just enough time to say goodbye, and I'll see you again tomorrow morning at 9:06. This is Santa Cruz Voice. I'm Charles Freedman. Just enough time. Okay. Very striking photograph. Episode 190. God damn it. I'm getting a little bit sick and fucking tired of this.